Thank you for tuning in to TG Talk. My name is Sailor Schwab, and I am SAE's Assistant Director of Communications. The SAE Foundation is back with another great interview. Foundation CEO Steve Mitchell spoke with Stan Strom, Director of Planned Giving at Embry Riddle Aeronautical University, SAE Alumnus, Province Upsilon Archon, and National Pie Baking Champion. Over the course of his membership, Stan has learned the importance of membership for life, and this episode focuses on that, giving back to your community, and rising above when faced with adversity. I hope that you enjoy it.
Come sing to Sigma Alpha Epsilon Epsilon Sigma Alpha Epsilon Sigma Alpha 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 Sigma Alpha Epsilon Sigma Alpha 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 Sigma Alpha.
So Stan, thank you so much for volunteering to do this for us. I really appreciate you.
Well, you're quite welcome, Steve.
You had one request that we call this the Rise Above segment. Tell me about that.
Here in Arizona, there's 26 Native American tribes, and two in particular, the Kachina, make Kachina dolls. That's the Hopi and the Navajo tribes. And so there's about 250 different kind of dolls, and they all mean something different. But the one that's really special is the eagle. And it has those spectacular feathers that are spread out. And it really was representative of the leader of the tribe, the one with the vision that can stay above and watch out for the tribe. So what's interesting about the eagle is that it doesn't have any kind of predator, except the black crow is a faster and more agile than the eagle. So the Native Americans used to see these crows fly behind the eagles, pester them, try to knock them down, come up from behind them. And so the eagle would just fly higher. And so there are pilots that have seen these magnificent birds at 30,000 feet or above. And so the rise above to me is symbolic that instead of giving into an aerial combat, the eagle just soars above. And one of the greatest lessons that I learned as a young person was that the greatest accomplishment is not in the rising, but in the rising after the fall. And so to me, rise above represents those so many challenges and losses that I've had to endure in my life and how I had to overcome that. So I wanted to call this session for the TG Talk Rise Above, because I think it's characteristic of who I am and the message that I'd like to convey to the audience.
So that's a great story. So
Thank you.
I've known you for years, and you've been involved in the fraternity nationally for a long time. For those that don't know as much about you, do you mind telling us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm from Arizona Beta, class of '82, but I'm an evolving work in progress. And to say that I've changed over time. I got married to a Pi Phi and a little sister, my best friend Brenda, 38 years ago. And we raised 3 beautiful children. They are the greatest accomplishment in our life because we really had to work hard at it. In my career, it's been in financial services, land development and brokerage, and in fundraising. So I'm ending my career now at a prestigious Embry Riddle Aeronautical University as the Director of Philanthropy. And I truly feel like I'm at my place in life.
Is this a stop before you come over to the foundation?
Absolutely. Yes, yes. So
because we could use all the help we can get.
What people don't know about me is that I'm a 2-time national pie baking champion and featured on Food Network with Bobby Flay.
Hence the Pie Guy license.
The Pie Guy, and I'm also in the 20-gallon club for blood donations because I've been a giver. And so I'd like to tell people about that. Because if you give back, that's my message, of course, is that your life will be blessed.
That's a great story. So everybody has an SAE experience, whether it's 2-year, 3-year, 4-year, or 40 years like yours. Tell us about your SAE experience.
Well, I'm a fraternal zealot. I've raised my hand for everything since I walked through those huge lions at 706 Alpha Drive in 1979. I was a fast mover. I was only there 3 years because I transferred in, and I've served in every single office. except for the Supreme Council. And I've had an opportunity to watch and have a front row seat to mentor 1,100 young men come through the chapter in the last 45 years. And I'm an example of SAE for life. When you take the vow and they say SAE is for life, I would have never realized how good it would be. And particularly that I had tremendous bonds of close friends in the fraternity, but today they're all from other chapters. And that's the message that is so significant about the fraternity, is that if you stay involved, you're going to have friendships like you and I that are just remarkably strong. And that's my SAE experience. I've never stopped being an SAE.
It's interesting, your background, you graduated in 82, I graduated in 83, you're at Arizona State, now Indiana, and you hit it on the head. I would never have expected to meet someone from another chapter and spend as much quality time as we have, or to bond as well as we have over the time.
Well, I served on the national staff, and one time when I was flying out of O'Hare, we had given out this beautiful gold watch with the SAE medallion, and I saw the gentleman next to me wearing it. And I said, "Oh, you're an SAE." And he goes, "Oh yeah, I was an SAE at so-and-so." And I go, "No, you are an
right.
SAE." And I've always remembered that. So it's about giving back, and you know, the fact that so many people have choices in life about supporting different causes and philanthropies and churches and things, and there was nobody doing it for the fraternity, and I felt like I had made a commitment to that before, that I would be there as a lifer, and I've been blessed because of it.
It's a great story. So for those of us that are on a national level, we call it COPA, Council of Province Archons, but tell us more about your role as a Province Archon.
So with the Council of Province Archons, I was a former Province Archon for Upsilon, and there's 30 provinces in the country today. And but that was in the late 80s. And so now I would consider myself like the elder statesman, because I finished my role with the Phoenix Alumni. And we want to make sure we're continuing the work that we started, and there was a gap here in the province level because of the structure of the large Arizona-New Mexico territory. So I raised my hand, and so I'm back. But instead of having to take a leadership role, it's in such incredible hands with Bill Volpe, Bill King, and Ian Stressman that I was able to sit back, and now I can be involved in the emerging chapters and trying to really take our message to the regions and serve in a role where they do listen to me, because I've been around for so long. And so now I'm going to train and find my replacement, and that's my role now with COPA. And I think we're going to see some real strong things in the next biennium after this convention in St. Louis, and I couldn't be more thrilled with being part of that.
So you mentioned your role on the Phoenix Area Alumni Association, which is huge for me. On the foundation, when we first got engaged, we started to look for the alumni associations that were performing better, best in class, if you will. And at the time, Arizona had just won as being the best alumni association in the country. And so I was fortunate enough, I got a call, I believe from you, to come out and speak to the group. And so I've been out here the last 3 years in a row, which is I find it as a blessing to get out of Chicago in March to come here. But it's an amazing group, and the things that you're doing, and the number of undergrads that show up at these events. Right. I mean, I think there was 140 or so people there at the one 2 years ago. So it just.
I was so fortunate to have mentors like Bill Fiskus and Charlie Boyd from Atlanta. Bill was from Detroit. And the list just goes on and on. And the problem is that when they die off, or they get to the point where they can't do the work anymore, there's a lot of places where it falls off. And we had the 1997 National Convention here in Phoenix. It was the first time at a resort. And in June, when it can be 110 or 117, it was a hard thing to actually win the approval at the convention at the time to bring it here. But after years, I was burned out, and in 2007 a group of alumni said, we want to restart this again. And Phoenix has 3,000 living alumni from 255 different chapters, and there's only 222 active today. So there's all these tombstones that are represented here. And we wanted to make it truly an area alumni association. And we were holding $250,000 in cash, maybe it was less than that, from the sale of the SAE house at Arizona State. And the Alumni Association asked if they could be the custodians of those funds. And we gave a lot of thought to that, but it made so much sense. There's a board of 11 that range in age from 24 to 84. They rotate off every 3 years, and it's absolutely fantastic of the work that they do. And all of these, there's no dues that have to be paid. And more importantly, we give all that money for scholarships and for Leadership School, Ritual Academy, to the Arizona chapters. And so we're making an impact. We've been voted for 4 straight years, plus the first year was runner-up for the outstanding Bill Fiscus Alumni Association. But what I would say is that we stole the best practices. And this is what chapters can do too. We went to New Orleans, Pensacola, Atlanta, Chicago, Portland, what Bill Thompson has done up at Oregon Alpha. And we took, and San Diego, can't leave them out, Kansas City. And we did, what are the best things that they're doing? And then we copied it, and then we improved upon it. So when COVID came, we added the Zoom. And so we have 100% participation. And we know that this was a board that was of 60 and above. And we wanted to get the younger guys and get them involved. And that's where you came in with the foundation and this whole concept that's now evolved with this career development, because we wanted to be the beta test for it. And so...
Is that because of Arizona beta?
No. But I would like to say that the effort was to try to show, because we knew how to do it and we had the resources to do it. And so if now our role is not to win the award anymore, and congrats to New Orleans this year, but to help spread that message, because if we have good alumni associations, or now these new groups like the golfers and these affinity groups like the SAE hunters and anglers, how cool is that we can have all this participation from alumni? And what we've really tried to do is have events where we can still have the undergraduate. It focuses on the alumni, but bring the undergraduate in to learn how good practices work.
And that's the thing I love too, is when we have our board meetings for the trustees out here, you've always been kind enough to bring the EA of either Arizona State or Embry Riddle to participate in these meetings. And they, I think sometimes we don't forget, but I think we lose track of why we do this. And we do what we do for the undergraduates so that they can learn from us and they can carry the message forward. Somebody did it for us, and now it's our turn.
It is our turn to do it. And so we're just blessed to be in that position to be able to participate and make it different for them.
So speaking of the undergraduates, think about, I always ask this question, what do you wish you knew now then? So what would you like to tell the 20-year-old Stan that would hopefully make a difference? Such
a great question. There's several things I would say. The first is that I had to learn to underpromise and overdeliver, because I would try to do too much. And I had an incredible office manager that caught me one time. She heard me on the phone saying, "Oh, I'll get it today." And she came in and she goes, "You have all these things on your calendar. There's no way you can get it done today." So I had to learn as a young man to say, "Hey, would Thursday be okay?" And then they would say, "Well, sure." And so then when I delivered it on Wednesday, they were like, "Wow, you over-delivered." So I would tell the younger me, make sure you appreciate that value. The other thing that I have done is I would avoid negative people, because they're vexations to the spirit and they're like cancer. And I tried way too many times to try to change people or help them. And you can't fix stupid. I came to that conclusion. So I would have learned to pass on after a certain period of time, and just don't spend more time trying to beat a dead horse, because negativity is absolutely a terrible thing.
I agree.
I would say the other thing is that patience is a virtue, and I did not have patience. And so it's okay if it takes longer, So enjoy the journey, because it is part of the process, and you'll find the goal in the end if you stay diligent. And that's what I would tell that younger person like me. I like to live in the present. That doesn't mean I don't set goals, but knowing that you can't do do-overs, just enjoy the time. So I realize that I'm only going to focus on stuff that I can control, and I don't get all the clutter to upset me. And the younger person, I had to learn a long time ago that you do change over time. I'm not the same 20-year-old that I am as a 64-year-old.
Thank goodness. You have a different perspective.
Are much more broad, much more calm and forgiving, and I think it's a blessing that life provides that. But you have to let it happen and not be so forceful to force it. And so that's what I would tell the younger person.
It's funny because I always think back, and when I was younger, a lot of people would suggest I don't have a lot of patience today, but if I went back, I had no patience, and I don't think it ever showed up until I had my oldest daughter, Kate. And I just remember like holding her, and suddenly like something clicked, and your entire perspective, it goes from this to this, and suddenly it just, all of the things that I thought were important before were not as important as they were prior to that. And so to my oldest daughter, Kate, if she ever watches this, thank you so much for making a huge impact on me.
Children will do that.
They will do that. So Stan, I know you've been involved in leadership school forever and a day. What was it that got you so engaged, and what made that such an integral part of your life, and why did you decide to continue to give back to leadership school?
Steve, what's amazing about leadership schools, I went once as an undergraduate in 1980, and I have attended 9 or 10 different times as a faculty after that. But what's great is that EAs talk to EAs, treasurers talk to treasurers, but most importantly, brothers talk to brothers. And one of the guest speakers at that first one was talking about how one person can make a difference, but if you could learn to build consensus, you could start a movement. That was the greatest leadership skill that I ever learned. And I've used it in coaching youth sports, raising children, starting businesses, how to build consensus. And it helped me immensely when I was EA, because I was able to implement things within the chapter that taught me those valuable tools of how to go and get buy-in. And when you do that, it just makes the job so much easier. So that was probably the reason that I was absolutely intrigued, because where else are you going to find an opportunity of between 400 and 800 young men that all converge at one time? Like-minded, either on the cruise ships or at the Levere Memorial Temple, and be able to see that and experience that together. There's nothing like it. And so that's why I've been such a big proponent of the leadership school. But for those who haven't been, we're starting this up again, and they're going to alternate it back to Evanston. But for those of you who have not seen the beautiful Levere Memorial Temple, it is absolutely a national treasure. And it will show you the magnitude of who we are, and the stories in the glass and in all the history of it, of the people that laid their life's work that continue this for the future. And that's the amazing story.
So I attended leadership school in '81, I believe, and that was the first time I ever saw the temple. And it was amazing back then. And I work there now, and I find myself from time to time sneaking in and just sitting on one of the pews and just looking at the glass and looking up, and it's a moving experience. And I think sometimes we take it for granted, but it's such a beautiful place. And we need to preserve it, and we need to continue to make investments so that it stays forever. It's the first one of its kind.
It's priceless with the last work of Louis Tiffany in the glass work, but I was married there, and it's so special to go back and see it. And when I went to that first leadership school, I met Hondo Davids from Maryland Beta, and I met
a DSA winner
that just won the DSA,
right.
and Gary Westling from Long Beach at Cal Lambda. And they are both just dedicated friends since we were in the dorms in 1980. And that's the story about how these young men that are going to convention now and future ritual academies, they're going to have these lifetime experiences that they will just treasure.
40-ish years.
Well, or longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
However God gives us.
Oh, yeah. So what's the best piece of advice that you've ever received and then implemented or tried to implement? And what did you learn from that?
Eddie Childs was the guest speaker at a leadership school, and he was from Oklahoma Kappa, an oil man, a multimillionaire. He owned the Texas Rangers at the time. And he came in and he talked about how to set and maintain your moral compass. And it was the best advice I ever had. And what he did, he said it was God, family, and work. And I followed that. But I was very successful in my business early and was basically retired at 42. And I thought it was all because of me. And we had a 9-year-old son at the time that came down with a tumor the size of a small grapefruit on his spine. And when the oncologist came in and explained the procedure, I prayed like I had never prayed before. And I still get emotional, but I reset my clock, and I determined from that point forward, work was never going to be my priority. And it was for me, God, family, and then work. And I never missed a Little League game. I never missed a sporting event, a student-teacher conference, nothing. And it was such a blessing. And of course, Johnny recovered and has never had an issue. But when you have a life experience like that, and it's talking about rise above, it resets your compass real quick. And so the other thing is that I was one of the good guys. I always followed the rules, but I found out the world has 50 shades of gray. And so it was hard for me in ethics, in business, when people went around me, cut me out of a deal, and this is just part of life. And I had to get past that and not allow negative things put me back. And so to that advice from Eddie Childs was probably the most valuable thing that I have learned and implemented, is just keeping set with your moral compass and things will work out.
That's great. And you learned that at leadership school?
I learned that at leadership school. That was like in 1982 or 3 when he was a guest speaker.
That's great.
Yeah.
So we're almost out of time here. Do you have any other advice that you'd like to offer to either the alumni brothers or to our undergraduate brothers?
What I would tell anyone today for some advice is become a giver and give early. And I raise money, and it's one thing for people to have a tax donation, but the true givers are the ones that do it because they want to make a difference. And what I love about the fraternity is that the philanthropy and what they do, if they don't have money, but they have their time and help somebody, give a hand up rather than a handout. And so I've always been a giver, and it will come back tenfold in life if you do that. And I think the other thing I would say that I have never done is burn bridges, but I leave a mark. And so I would say, how many times have you written an email and it's pretty crusty, and all of a sudden you put it down, you think about it overnight, and you come back and say, I'm going to delete it, or you change it and kind of tone it down. So to me, leaving the mark is the significant thing. But I've never ever burned a bridge. And my wife disagrees with me on some business associates I've dealt with, but I said, listen, I'm not going to do it. I'm going to take the high road. And so I'm writing my book, the second book, and it's called The Pruning Tree, It's a book of metaphors in life. And so the pruning, it's like the tree of life is actually the biblical character from the book of John with I am the vine. And so pruning it back actually forces the roots to set the foundation. The trunk gets stronger in each successive year. And then the canopy eventually can grow and house hundreds, if not thousands, of insects and animals and whatever with its fruit and nuts and shade and cover, etc. And so to me, I took all these amazing metaphors. Well, the grass looks greener on the other side, a room with a view, the fruit doesn't fall far from the tree. And I took them and compiled them into I think it's a magnificent script about this message of sometimes less is more. And when you prune things back and you lose things or you have setbacks in life, it forces you to get stronger and set that foundation. And then with that, all these other things come to light. And especially the concept that I wanted to talk about initially, and that's rise above. Because if you do that, so that my message and my mark on life will be when I finish my book.
So Stan, thank you so much for doing this. I've learned a lot about you and that I thought I knew pretty well, and now I know even better. So thank you for sharing your insights and your story with us today. And I'm hoping somebody hears this and it resonates somehow with them. And that's the whole point of why we do what we do. Tom, you mentioned it earlier. It doesn't have to be about money, right? It's time, treasure, and talent.
Right.
Any of those three things, if someone wants to give back to the fraternity, that will take all three of them. They all make a difference. And we're doing it for the undergraduates.
Right. Well, I felt sometimes like I've been selfish to have a front row seat to watch these 1,100 men come through. But I've had a special affinity for them at Archons. But these young men, I absolutely have loved them. And in relationships like my own children. And they in turn have loved me. And so the message from here is if you continue to be involved and you have the lucky opportunity to be on the House Corporation, an advisor, any kind of capacity, and you give back, the fraternity will bless you. And so thank you. It's been my pleasure to share my life concepts with you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
You're welcome.